Good afternoon, everybody. This is Patrick Milliken from the Poison Pen Bookstore in Scottsdale, Arizona. And folks, you're in for a real treat this afternoon. This is a very special program. And it is a real honor to have Patricia Cornwell and Jamie Lee Curtis with us. And let me give the proper intro that they both deserve. Patricia Cornwell is a #1 New York Times best-selling author and widely considered one of the world's top crime writers. In 1990, Patricia Cornwell sold her first novel, Postmortem, while working at the office of the chief medical examiner in Richmond, Virginia. An auspicious debut, it went on to win the Edgar, Creasy, Anthony, and Macavity Awards, as well as the French, and I'm going to blow this, Prix du Roman, uh, something, the first book ever to claim all these distinctions in a single year. Growing into an international phenomenon, the Scarpetta series won Cornwell the Sherlock Holmes Award for Best Detective, created by an American author, the Gold Dagger Award, the RBA Thriller Award, and the Medal of Chevalier of the Order of Arts and Letters for her contributions to literary and artistic development. Okay, today Cornwell's novels and iconic characters are known around the world. Beyond the Scarpetta series, Cornwell has written the definitive nonfiction account of Jack the Ripper's identity. She's written cookbooks, a children's book, a biography of Ruth Graham, and 3 other fictional series based on the characters Win Garano, Andy Brazil, and Captain Callie Chase. Cornwell continues exploring the latest space-age technologies and threats relevant to contemporary life. Her interests range from the morgue to artificial intelligence and include visits to Interpol, the Pentagon, the U.S. Secret Service, and NASA. And the brand new book in the Scarpetta series is called Sharp Force. We all have copies here. And Patricia has very kindly signed a batch of them for us. So I'll try to put a link in the comments field if you'd like to order one. Um, Now, Jamie Lee Curtis
What?
is of course one of the finest actors of our time. This is my quirky intro, so bear with me. She's also a producer and an author, best known for her iconic roles in such films as Halloween, which traumatized a youngster like me growing up in the late 70s and early 80s for many years. Fish Called Wanda, Knives Out, Freaky Friday, and the recently released Freakier Friday. In 2023, she won a Best Supporting Actor Oscar for her role in the film Everything Everywhere All at Once. Um, Also, an unforgettable performance in the TV series The Bear,
Mm.
which includes the best family holiday dinner sequence ever captured on film. Um, she'll be honored by the Women in Film organization at their awards ceremony in November. And coming up, she's a producer and star along with Nicole Kidman of Prime Video's upcoming series Scarpetta. She'll be playing Kay Scarpetta's sister Dorothy.
Yes.
So again, thank you so much for allowing the Poison Pen to be a part of this. We really appreciate it. I'm going to step off screen and let you guys have a fun program.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much. Lovely. Thanks, Patrick. So what you all don't know is that Patricia Cornwell and I met at a conference. I'm very punctual. My daughter would say aggressively early. And Patricia and Stacy were also aggressively early to the cocktail party part of the conference. And, you know, when you're 4 people early, you immediately go like, oh, hi. Now, Patricia and I had met at GMA or the Today Show. Which was it, babe?
It was GMA.
It was GMA. I was doing something. I think I was selling yogurt that makes you shit. And Patricia was promoting a book. And we met in the kind of green room area and had an immediate kind of feeling about each other. So when we ran into each other at this conference, we had that like, oh, hi moment. And for the rest of the conference, the 4 of us linked up. So whenever there were presentations or meals, the 4 of us would find ourselves, drifting toward each other because I think we felt safe. We didn't know anybody there, and it felt a little like heady for me. And that's really how she and I and Stacy and Chris became friendly. And over the years, we have been friends. Whenever my husband and I travel to Boston, we visit and we have social time. When they come to California, they let us know and we have social time. And all of that was great. And we had a beautiful friendship, albeit long distance. We have dogs that we're a little obsessed with. And all of that was great. And then the Captain Chase books came out. And I have a deal with Blumhouse, which is Jason Blum's company. And so I was curious about who owned the rights to them and tried to sort of, as a neophyte producer, try to see if maybe Blumhouse would spark to the books. They did, but they're, a little more crime. They're a little darker in their tone at Blumhouse. And the man who used to run the television department said to me, "What's up with Scarpetta?" And of course, Scarpetta is this legendary character, this legendary series of books. And I just assumed someone had snagged them up for film and television, which they had for years, which we will ask Patricia about very soon. And what happened is, I remember I called Patricia one day, and like you do when you're friends, and I said, hey, we talked about our dogs and our spouses. And then I said, "What's up with Scarpetta?" And she said, "Nothing." And I said, "Well, who owns the rights?" And she said, "I do." I said, "Well, I know you own the rights because you're Patricia Cornwell. Of course you do. But who has the options for the rights to turn them into a television show or a movie?" And she said, "Right now, no one." And that launched our creative partnership, which has resulted, as you heard in the introduction, to Scarpetta being brought to television through Amazon Prime with Blumhouse and Liz Sarnoff, who's the showrunner. And it stars Nicole Kidman, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But the reason I'm bringing all of it up is, remember, I ran into her at a conference. Today, 5 minutes before we are doing this presentation with you, we both got sent the trailer for Scarpetta. So both of us watched the trailer and then jumped on this Zoom. And so if Patricia looks like she's quivering and if I look like I've lost my mind, it's because we're so excited. Anyway,
it took me a while to breathe after I watched that. It was unbelievable.
Well, I think it's going to be the same for people when they see the show. I just wanted to get everybody sort of on the same page of why Patricia and I are friends, how we know each other, and now we are colleagues, and we'll discuss all that. So, hi, Patricia.
Hello, Jamie. And also, I think the first time that you interviewed me, was it about 2015 or something?
Yep.
But you were kind enough to do it in LA. We were on a stage there. It was for one of the Scarpetta books. And afterwards, I started writing you every year, and I said, honestly, you're like the very best interviewer I've ever had. Would you do this again? It isn't just because you're Jamie Lee Curtis, although that helps, but you really are. You've always been just awesome at this. And
well, I'm enthusiastic because I'm a fan. So let's start with me being a fangirl. So I'm trying to remember where I was when I first read Postmortem, but I've kept in contact with Kay Scarpetta for a very long time.
I guess so, because you're her sister.
Well, not anybody yet. So let's just start at the beginning. When you first came up with Kay Scarpetta, give us a little sense of her origin story, just for someone who's coming to hear you for the first time, so that you can explain who
Okay.
you were and how Kay Scarpetta.
Well, I was a former journalist, a crime reporter who then wanted to try her hand at writing crime novels. And the one thing I didn't know anything about was what happens when the body leaves the crime scene and goes to wherever that morgue is where people come out of and smell so bad. Um, and so I had an opportunity to get a tour of the medical examiner's office in Richmond, Virginia, where at that time I was living with Charlie Cornwell, hence my last name. And I was just so fortunate that one of the first five females to be a forensic pathologist in this country happened to be Dr. Marcella Fierro at the Richmond office of the chief medical examiner. And that was who gave me my first tour
Wow.
of a morgue. And she's Italian. And I never imagined that there were women medical examiners because there weren't hardly any. But this was 1984. So that was when I became smitten with this whole idea of learning everything I could about that in the forensic science labs upstairs. The name Scarpetta is while I started doing this research, I thought, and Scarpetta was going to be a minor character. I was trying to write Agatha Christie type books. Anyway, Charlie Cornwell he was always telling me these funny stories about this landlady he had at the University of Virginia when he was in graduate school there. He was one of my professors at Davidson. He was the English professor. Anyway, her last name was Scarpetta. And I thought, what an incredible name. And I'd never heard it anywhere. So I thought, I know, I'll call this character Scarpetta. And I talked to Marcella and we talked about names and she said, why don't you give her a short first name like Kay? I said, that's a good idea. So then I thought, well, for sure I'm going to want her to cook Italian. So this name works for all of this. And that's really how it all got started. And it took me, 6 years of being a full-time worker in the ME's office to finally write postmortem.
Wait, it 6 years?
Yes, I was there 6 years. That's,
Wow.
I mean, that's why I know so much weird ass stuff
Yeah.
because I was there
Well,
every day.
your books are filled with specificity. There is a I'm going to refer to it as a wonks. You're a scientist. You are interested, your word choices for descriptions, your ability to describe substances and smells and sights using language is legendary. How there's
Thank you.
29 of these,
I'm sorry.
29
Oh
books.
yes, that's 29. 29. I'm working on 30 as we speak, but 29.
Um,
And but you know what fuels all of this? And yes, I am fascinated by science when it can help us. Why? Because it can help us figure something out. I don't know if I know you're like this because I've been around you enough to see how you read the environment like a spy and you're very much understand cause and effect. And so science gives us an ability to discover what something is that might give us a clue about who did this. And why do we care about that? We care about it because it's our own survival at stake. If there's a serial killer running around, if we don't find some clues to figure out who this is, God only knows who's going to be next. So
yeah.
this is part of our human instinct, and Jamie knows this better than anyone. Fear. What we fear is what we're drawn to. Because if we understand it, maybe it won't scare us anymore. Although that's never been true with your movies that have all
Well,
this scary stuff. It still scares me even if I understand it.
as you know, and I've been outspoken truth teller, that the irony or the kind of funny idea is that in fact I am a scaredy cat and I actually don't like anything scary and I don't like genre films and I watch most TV shows like this. I mean, I'm seriously a bit of a scaredy. I mean, I'm brave, but I'm a scaredy cat.
But that's
Um,
but that's my point. The reason that you can play, I mean the slasher,
yeah, no, 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 of course,
but
yeah.
the reason one of the reasons you can do that so well, one of the reasons I can write about it so well is I understand fear.
Yeah, far off.
I can't watch that either. I can't watch it, any of that stuff. I mean, I can't even watch Grey's Anatomy during dinner because I can't look at the blood. Stacy knows it's, she'll say, "Oh, what is it we can't watch tonight?" And if all, and then the one thing I can watch that doesn't scare me that, and I've told you before, so I'll say, "Well, let's just put on Judge Judy because I can eat my dinner." And
By the way, I mean, I promise you, if you're watching this, I promise you that will not be the thing that you take away is that Patricia Cornwell watches Judge Judy as she eats Stacy's delicious food, let me just say. So I also want for people who are maybe OG Patricia Cornwell fans, but maybe, the beautiful part of being an author is that you can pick up a current Scarpetta book and learn through your masterful writing who Scarpetta is, who are the people in her life. You give a tiny bit of a reminder to the reader. So for someone who's never read a Scarpetta book, who can pick up this book, will know who she is. But what's very important for our relationship is that you wrote you wrote 25 Scarpetta books and then
quit.
decided how many?
Yeah, that's about right. My last one was Chaos in 2015.
Yeah,
And I
so,
can't, somewhere around in there, right.
and then stopped writing about Scarpetta. Scarpetta actually left her job and moved away. Now, 3, 4 years ago, when we first started developing the Scarpetta TV show, you had just reintroduced Scarpetta back into the original office that she had left. So when Scarpetta left, she is now returning as the chief medical examiner to an office that was hers originally, but wasn't then for a period of time. And a lot had changed.
A lot has
And a
been
lot of
grown.
the same resentments from people. She certainly didn't have allies there that were her people because she was taking over for her successor, who then kind of effed it up. And so she also walked back in. So she was almost new again, but she was much older and much more experienced. That's this new part of Scarpetta that is the last 5 books, which Sharp Force is one of. But it's important for people to remember that Scarpetta walked away, came back, but our show, I'm giving a little bit of stuff away that Amazon, I'll probably get a call. What nobody knows yet is that our show deals with both the past and the present. So we actually meet Scarpetta back in the day when she was brand new, the first woman ME, and what that looked like and what kind of the politics of that, what technology was like then. And then we meet her in the modern era, which is when Nicole Kidman steps in. So when you rejoined Scarpetta, what was the reason why you chose to like bring her back? Was there something that had
Yeah,
occurred politically? What was the
I think COVID was a big thing. COVID, when the whole planet, it was the apocalypse, when you get out on
yeah.
the road and not a single car and everything was so awful. And I'd written these 2 space thrillers, I'd started doing that research in 2016, thinking I would do movies or TV and not have to have a book hanging over my head every year. But after 3 or 4 years of all this NASA research, just huge immersion into every kind of esoteric technology you can imagine. And then COVID hit,
Mhm.
and everything gets turned upside down. And the space thrillers, to be honest with you, they just weren't popular, and I didn't want to do another one. And I thought, I wonder what Scarpetta would do in this world that we're in right now. What would she have to say? How would she handle all the things that we're having to handle? And so I thought maybe she'll want to do a case again. And here's the big difference. Because I'd been away for a while and had done research in fields that were different. I mean, there's a lot of similarity between a lot of the technologies that go on in aerospace and all that go on in a forensic lab, because physics is physics and chemistry is chemistry. So if you know some stuff, but learning all this gave me the ability, for example, in a book like Sharp Force, to have the victims haunted by a hologram that actually is a surveillance device, because it can pass through the wall of your house, and it's live streaming video and audio to the maniac at the controls. He's using a very unusual drone, which was being developed by the intelligence community. And so, and you know, it was stolen, by the way. And so all of this, which creates this ghost-like character, which is so creepy. This guy dressed like out of the 1800s, like Jack the Ripper, only there's red glowing eyes and he's holding a knife. And you can literally, with holographic technology, you could be looking at your window at 1 o'clock in the morning, there's fog swirling in the street lights, and here's this thing, you know, levitating down the street. But worse, this is how he stalks his victims, the phantom slasher, as he's called. And so, and oh, I'll just give you one little creepy scene since we have a minute or two.
Yeah.
It's Christmas time, and they've had thunder snow, which means you've got a thunderstorm, but it's snowing, and the weather is just all hell breaking loose. And Scarpetta's coming home. It's Christmas Eve, and the Phantom Slasher he has not struck again, but he has stalked and appeared at a newscaster's house, come into her bedroom while she's on her Stairmaster watching TV with all the Christmas lights blaring, and this thing comes through her window. Well, Scarpetta hears about this because she knows, you know, these cases are hers. Well, she goes home, and Reno comes up her long driveway, the 18th century estate that's haunted, and it's in the woods, and there's fog on the driveway, and the lights are just kind of blurry through it. And Marino drops her off at the door, and he leaves, and she's inside the entryway looking at the security screen, you know, watching him leave, and watches the gate closed. She sees his taillights go away, except they start coming toward her. These two, and she realizes those aren't taillights, these two red orbs that are coming up her driveway, heading to her house. Well, that's the kind of stuff that I would think about as a scary, spooky little driven child. And now, as an adult that's done research with NASA, I said, let's have a way to make that be real and have science be the reason. So that is why it's a blessing that I went away, because I came back with new crayons in my box.
Do you believe in ghosts?
I'm sorry, what?
Do you believe in ghosts?
Oh, do I believe in ghosts? I believe that there are what I call energy disturbances, or maybe even portals into different dimensions where we have breakthroughs. But do I believe that there are, I mean, I hate to use paranormal because I'm not sure I'm not sure it isn't normal. But yes, I mean, I do think that you know, who we are is never destroyed. Our bodies are, you know, we're stuck with these spacesuits we walk around, and we are these carbon-based spacesuits that are finicky and so fragile, but yet so amazingly resilient. But who we are inside of that is a different story. Our consciousness, our soul. And I do not believe that that is destroyed when people die. And I've certainly had experiences where I've heard things that don't make sense. I've seen things that don't make sense, especially in old places. And I had a lot of that when I was doing the Jack the Ripper research, a whole lot. And I wasn't the only one who witnessed it. I once lived in a house that was haunted, and I finally had to leave because this lady would appear in the mirror. Now, you tell people that, they think that it's time for you to, you know, go back to your psychiatrist.
Well, I also think because you are so technology driven and you know so much about technology, that to me there's that sort of combo platter of you have to have spirit and you have to have technology. And like, for instance, in the book, the last book, Bigfoot was in the book. and this whole idea of Bigfoot, while at the same time there was all of this massive amounts of technology. And you make technology understandable, because I'm not a science wonk, but I feel like when I read your books, I leave them with a better understanding of what in fact is possible. How much do you work with, for instance, like the FBI or science? You know what I mean? How tech, like, who's your tech go-to people? Bad
Well,
question, but you get
one
it.
of my tech people is retired from NASA, and he specializes in electromagnetic energy. I mean, he understands how satellites work. I mean, anybody that can do that. And Ken, you're probably watching out there, and so Ken helps me with a lot of that. We'll get on the phone, Ken Dudley. Now you're busted, and we'll talk about like drone technology, and if you're going to have like a hologram and it's going to really be able to go through a wall and be visible, and you could even hear spooky music playing. And this thing, though, has a purpose. It's not just to terrorize the victim, it's transmitting intelligence to the operator. And this is what he's been doing and meanwhile, he's going to defeat all the locks and the cameras using signal jammers. So I do have, smart people that I can discuss these things with. And Dr. Fierro, by the way, is still it is still alive and well. And when I have tricky forensic pathology questions, I get her on the phone. I called her about the Bigfoot. I said,
Mm.
okay, now this is the former chief medical examiner of Virginia, Dr. Marcella Fierro, who's a real purist. And I said, okay, crazy question, but just bear with me. If you went and you were at this crime scene out in the middle of nowhere and someone showed you this really big footprint that was left inside an abandoned gold mine, and they're saying this is a big footprint, and meanwhile there's these dead people torn up, thrown all over the place out at this old campsite, what would you do with that footprint? And she said, well, my first thought would be somebody's having a really good time with me, but then I'd say, no, I got to treat this as evidence. And I would treat it as evidence in every form of fashion of the word, which is, of course, what Scarpetta does in that book.
Right.
And, but, I've been fortunate enough to know so many of these wonderful people, FBI agents, Secret Service agents, people at Interpol, Scotland Yard, coroners in other countries, forensic pathologists here, death investigators, NASA people, on and on. And all of them, I'm so grateful because I wouldn't be who I am. Forensic scientists, I can't forget them. But all of these people have given me the ability to write these books with an authenticity that is unusual because really I never stopped being a journalist. I just
Oh,
go
right,
around,
sure. It's
I'm reporting,
curiosity.
and then I build a story that's make believe, but it's also in many ways more true than it's false because I don't tell you anything that's not within the realm of possibility. And speaking of sharp force, so we have to tell this one little story about your nefarious influence on that book. Uh, because when I was down in Nashville a year ago filming this little cameo, I can't say what it is, and I was very nervous. And Jamie was kind enough to be with Stacy and me going around and showing us all kinds of things about a show being made, filmed and sets, things that I've never experienced before. Um, and we were driving around, and she looked at me and she said, she said, Dorothy should have a moment with Benton in the basement of their house. And I said, what do you mean by a moment? And she said, you know exactly what I mean by a moment. And I said, well, Scarpetta's not going to be happy about that. And she said, I don't care.
Well, okay. So,
Okay. And I wrote it. It's in there.
yes, I know.
Everybody, when you get to that point, you'll know what I'm talking about. And it's her fault. Okay. Just remember that.
You frame books often around holidays because there's a time frame which is very effective in a story because we all know what happens around holidays. So in this book, it's Christmas to New Year, right? And so you know there's this chunk of time, you know that people's normal patterns are disrupted over the holidays, places don't have as much staff. So by choosing to, set this book over the holiday, it just sets it up in such a great way. How long does it take you to write a Scarpetta book?
Well, the better part of a year, which doesn't sound like, that's including, I have other things that I'm doing, including, looking at all your wonderful scripts and that privileged stuff I get to do for the show. But, I spend an enormous amount of time on one
Yes.
because that it's a sad thing to confess, but I'm in my office pretty much every day, 7 days a week if it's available, and even holidays because I love to do it and I want to do it, and I stay in that mode. Um, that's kind of been what I've done for all these years.
Are you a daily page count person?
No, I mean, I have a minimum where I'll say if you can just try to do 1,000 words a day, and it doesn't sound like much, but for me, it's got to be really good. And I keep going back, and then I move forward, and I go back,
Mhm.
and I move forward. And the biggest thing for me, to be honest, is figuring out my story. It's not the
Mhm.
writing. It's the I will not continue to move forward if I'm not sure what's going on. And I'm really working the case as the characters are. So, for example, I could be 50 pages out from the end of the book, and there might be three different people that might be the killer, and I'm not sure which one it is yet. And
Wow.
and I
So
will say to
you don't usually start with the
no.
killer.
No, I'm working on this
Wow.
one right now, and I've got like five suspects, and I'm like, you better wind this up, girlfriend. I said to Scarpetta.
Wow. Oh,
No,
that's
I don't. I
fascinating.
start with like with Sharp Force. I started with, Stacy, is this wonderful neuroscientist and at McLean Hospital, which is the oldest psychiatric hospital in the country. And like other places, what these beautiful places do with these incredible grounds is they start selling some of it off and putting in high dollar condos. So I imagined, what if you had this old hospital in the Potomac River, and I made up this Mercy Island because you can't use a real place for what I'm about to do there. And this hospital goes back to the 1700s where women would get sent off, shipped to shore, simply for, saying something, being quarrelsome, or, getting in the way, especially when the husband has a mistress, and bye bye, you go off to Mercy Island. Well, they're condos. Scarpetta gets a call. It's wee hours of Christmas morning, and there's snow everywhere. And she's supposed to be heading off to London. Well, that's not going to happen. Off she goes to Mercy Island because the Phantom Slasher has struck inside one of these condos and killed a woman psychiatrist, badly injured a person upstairs. Um, and this is how this all begins. And the juxtaposition of a Christmas wreath on a door
Hmm.
when you've got a bloodbath like that inside. And then meanwhile, somehow the signal's jammed, there's no power, it's snow everywhere. They can't figure out how this guy got in because there's no tire tracks. And once again, the phantom has struck, but what he does is nothing fictitious about that. There's nothing phantom-esque about the way he stabs these people. And he does something else. He bites. And he leaves a very strange bite mark pattern that doesn't seem of this world any more than he does when you see videos of that hologram. So, anyway, the Christmas season heightens
Yeah.
drama and
Yeah.
also the poignancy because Scarpetta does something in the very beginning of this book. And let me tell you, the key to Scarpetta is she always does that one thing that nobody else is going to bother with. And in this case, the book opens with what they call a floater. This poor old guy fell off a fishing pier at night, in the winter, right? Not long before Christmas. And he's not found for a while. And when he is, He's a stinky, nasty mess. Okay. Sorry to say it, but it's true. Scarpetta's doing that case when the book opens on Christmas Eve and there's Christmas music in the boombox. She's all by herself. Nobody wants to come in there because it smells like holy hell. But this guy had a nice watch on. He's got a wife with twins. He finds, there's a nice piece of jewelry and a little gift box in his pocket that obviously is a present for his wife for Christmas. And they don't live too far from where she does. And she says, you know what? I'm just going to drop off his personal effects myself because I don't want to leave this stuff. It's valuable and it's a present. And, I just can't, it's just too heartless to think of this family. Tomorrow's Christmas, and then I'm going to send this stuff effing UPS to them. So Marino's like, Doc, you don't know these people. Well, she's going to do it anyway. And she does. But that exposure to that creates all sorts of little bits of inroads of information because it turns out this guy fell into the water. What's weird about it, he's fishing on this pier. One of the things they find on the pier is a little ice chest, this little lantern. Why does he even go out there? Well, that's another story. You can read it in the book because it's kind of a weird reason. But his gun is left on the pier and two bullets had been fired from it. So what the hell was he shooting at in nighttime in December that caused him perhaps to go overboard? Well, it's all connected, you'll see.
Well, so for the viewers, that's how these books go. Like basically it's like the keep reading part of it, and it's what make your books so specific and spectacular.
Thank you.
And I will not give away what happens in the book, but it's very interesting and totally did not, see it coming, which I'm one of those people where I try to out. Now, I'm assuming, correct me if I'm wrong, the amount of CSI, people solving crimes in television and movies, you have to stay ahead of those people because everyone thinks they're you. Like everyone thinks they kind of know. How much of that do you have to factor in?
I really don't factor it in because, it's funny because you and I have talked about this. We don't want to make a TV series that's a procedural.
Right.
Because what we want are human stories and human drama that like in the fashion of the horror tales of the 1800s and Agatha Christie, but yet you throw in the science and all this good stuff. I don't want to. I don't want to try to write a better procedural. I did procedurals. I mean, I hate that word, but my books, particularly in the 90s, had more of a procedural element because nobody knew about any of this back
Right.
then. So
But
if
now
I,
they do.
but now they do. So I'm not going to spend 5 pages on the scanning electron microscope and how it works.
Right.
Or even all that what it looks like. What I do now is much more story driven, much more story driven. I don't care. Okay, excuse my lip. You read my lips. I don't care about the procedures that much anymore because the science and people are so smart and boundaries have changed so sufficiently that pretty much whatever you can do to figure out how to solve a major problem is worth considering as long as it's not, shall we say, as long as it doesn't do harm, as Scarpetta would say, do no harm. But does that always mean you go by the rules totally and you connect all those dots? Does that mean that she's going to say, oh, but you know what? Typically, a forensic pathologist wouldn't go and look at this particular thing. She'd say, you want to show it to me, baby? I'm looking. I'll go.
So speaking of looking at something, I'm a queen of sort of moving it to the moving pictures, if you will. I do very good segues. Tell us all about the history of trying to bring Scarpetta to a screen, because the books have been, this is your 29th book. You've been writing these books for 35 years. Without naming names per se, why don't you just explain to everybody the attempts or over the years what has happened?
You know, it's been the weirdest thing, and some of it is understandable because launching the very thing that caused Scarpetta to to become a phenomenon. And in the 90s, I can say this unabashedly and take no pride in it. I just was lucky. It was like getting struck by lightning. I had no idea that I'd created a whole new genre that would then, be the origin story in a way for so many shows and other books and things that not because I created forensic science, I most assuredly did not, but because I made it accessible to people and I showed you how you could use it to tell stories. That's what happened. And in the process of that, um, you know, there were from the very first option was like 1989, and then it was an option then on out with every major studio and production companies, and I talked to all kinds of the top actresses of the time. There were so many attempts, and honestly I really think where it always fell apart was in the writing. And
Hmm.
also I think the two things that I have going for me that has caused this to happen this time, one, first and foremost, is you, because it was your idea and you wanted to do it and you have carried the ball down the field. And not only that, you're not only also the producer, but you star in it, which was way more than you ever bargained for when we had
Yes.
this first conversation. So that, and then you get Liz Sarnoff, who's read the books and who had a vision for how to take this material and put it on TV. And she's honestly, she and her wizards, as I call her writers, that they're the only ones that have ever succeeded in doing this. And that's
Well,
just
and it may be
including me.
because the 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 characters and the amount of technology that it may be too much to try to encapsulate into a 2 hour movie. I don't know. I'm guessing that to try to tell that kind of amount of information in a movie, whereas in a TV series, you have more runway to really unpack and get to know the characters and get to know the science. So, just for the uninitiated here, the way this happened was you heard how I said, well, who have the rights? So, once Blumhouse, and my company is called Comet Pictures, bought the rights to the book, and Liz Sarnoff was the first writer who called us and said that she not only was a fan of the books, she knew them backwards and forwards, that she and her mother had read them together when Liz moved. Anyway, it's a beautiful story. Um, and then this weird, like, happenstance where I met Nicole at the Oscars in 2021, and she stopped and spoke to me. I had never met her before, and she was very complimentary. And maybe a week or two later, Liz Sarnoff was having a meeting with Nicole's company to just talk about the possibility of working together. And she explained that she was in the process of adapting your book into a TV series, and her producing partner, Per Sari, said, well, Nicole has always wanted to be Scarpetta. Now, I did not know this. I don't know if you knew this, but from that moment to today, Nicole Kidman sort of joins the show. But Nicole Kidman, who had just met me at the Oscars, said to her producing partner and the network, Amazon and Blumhouse, well, Jamie's in the show, because of course they said to her, Jamie's producing Scarpetta. So she was like, well, and she's going to be in it. And when they called me and said, Nicole thinks you're in the show, it was like, yes, of course I'm in the show. And it was not my intention, as you mentioned, to be in the show. And the question really became very quickly, who would I be? And, there's Maggie, who is her secretary, her assistant. There are a couple other women. But then somebody said, she has a sister.
Yeah.
And the sister's name is Dorothy Farinelli. And I was like, oh, yeah, I'll be Dorothy. So all of a sudden, I find myself now in the show. And just so you all know, this is what I get sent when I got sent the galleys. Mine is a paperback galley edition with, I got this note from Patricia Cornwell. So you have to understand, to see two Dorothy have fun is just a thrill. Can you imagine that I get this in the mail and then I'm Dorothy Farinelli in the books? So we've now made the show. The show's going to be on in March. We've said that we've seen the trailer. It's incredible. The cast is fantastic.
Yeah.
And, it's coming out in March. You guys everyone will know Scarpetta's coming in March. What they don't know, Patricia Cornwell, is that there's another book coming out. There's a TV show coming out in March of next year. There's another book coming out, and it is not a Kay Scarpetta book. And I believe we can talk about it here. And since I thought Patrick would enjoy getting a little.
Well, we should mention it since you're in it.
Okay, but
Yes,
tell us
yes.
what's happening next May.
Okay, well, so when I finished the book Sharp Force that we're talking about, I was a little bit early with my deadline. I don't know how that happened, but I was. And I'd been talking with some people about some other kind of show, something about maybe based on my life as a writer or whatever. And what some things that ideas that were shown to me were like so unrecognizable as me. I thought, well, I'll write up some biographical material, to give for the writers if they ever do this. Well, I started doing that, and next thing I knew, I was telling the story, and next thing I knew, I was writing my memoir, and next thing I knew, I'd written my memoir, and that's coming out in May. And in
Okay,
it,
news is
and
out.
in it, I do go into a lot of detail about all the attempts at films and whatever for Scarpetta, and of course my attempts at books and all the rest of it. But I talk about what it was like coming down for the filming, and you don't know because you haven't seen it yet, and how and I tell a little bit about what you're really like when nobody's looking. When somebody wrecks their car, you're the first one to run across the street to make sure they're okay, and then I look at you and go, aren't I supposed to be the one who does that? But no. But anyway, it I'm looking forward to that. I can't tell you the title yet,
I think you're not the only one looking forward to
but
that. I
it gives
Patrick
me a
right
chance to
now.
thank people for one thing. It gives me a chance to thank
Yeah,
people
yeah.
and to tell some wonderful stories that, so often in life, the things that didn't seem fun when we were coming along become our treasures because they're our best stories. They're
Sure.
our best stories. And so many of my best stories might not have been a whole lot of fun, including a lot of the research I've done, to be honest. But they're my treasures, and I can't wait to share them with you.
Well,
I hope you'll talk.
I'm
I hope you'll talk to me about it when it comes out.
yes, and perhaps
Yes.
Patrick will have us on again, the Poison Pen,
Yes.
for the exploration of that part of your life. Um, what do I want to? I want to see if there's anything people who are watching have a specific question, if there is any. Look at Patrick's face; he's so happy.
I'm really happy.
You're
Um,
very happy with that news.
I'm very happy. No, it's very exciting, Patricia, about the memoir. Maybe we could lure you out to the desert for an in-person event. That would be so much fun.
Maybe we can. That'd be fun.
I don't know if you're touring, but
Oh,
This will be a big
oh,
a big tour, and I want to go as
oh,
many
I
places as
think
I
she'll be
can.
touring.
So,
I, I,
I do what she says.
And who knows, maybe
This
we
is
meet Jamie
this is someone
Looney.
who her idea of a gift to me is a scalpel. Oh, and also, oh look, I have this right over here. You know, this
Yes,
is
well, I know what that is. Thank
that's
you.
my
Yes,
crew
so
gift.
here's for the audience listening. When when Patricia handed over um Kay Scarpetta and Dorothy and Marino and Benton and Lucy and all of the other characters that we've all gotten to know over all of these beautiful books, that's a moment of trust. And one of the most beautiful parts of the fact that we ran into each other at a conference, and now all these years later we're colleagues producing a TV show together. It's trust, right? Like I'm not a bona fide producer. I'm now, but when I bought the rights to the book, I had not produced something of note, and that demanded trust. And I'm when I say I'm going to do something, I try to say I'm going to do it, and I do it, and I try to do it, and I also say I won't lie to you, and I'll never not share something going on. But at the same time, it takes a lot of trust for someone like Patricia to hand over the rights to your books. And what she always said to Liz Sarnoff, Amazon, Blumhouse, was, consider me your Swiss Army knife. Like I am your Swiss Army knife. If you're in a writing situation and you've painted yourself into a corner, I will pull out the corkscrew. I'll be the little Phillips head. I'll be the blade. I'll be, like that's, she said, use me like a Swiss Army knife, which is why I gifted our main crew a Swiss Army knife on the show, because it was so indicative of what Patricia's participation in the show has been. What else? I mean, everything I wanted to talk to you about has been covered. Is there anything, Patrick? Is anybody
I
asked a
just want to
question?
make one, but I do want to make a comment that
What, Patricia? What?
okay, because I know you can't stand it when anybody says anything nice about you, but I do want to make this comment that how eerie is it that when I created the Dorothy character long ago, I made her a children's author. And
Yes, a little
then
weird.
you come along and you're a children's author, but you also happen to be Jamie Lee Curtis. And it's been the strangest thing. I mean, I sent you an email and I meant it when I said that I am learning dimensions of the Dorothy character in my work because of watching you. That I think that you're more Dorothy than the Dorothy I created, and I think people are going to have so much fun. Um,
So to that question, just to add to that, because this would be a question I now would ask you. Have you adjusted now that you've met the actors who are playing Marino, Benton, Lucy, me, and have you adjusted? Well, you said it, I guess, that you've written something that came from, but how have you adjusted your writing now to the
well,
fact that they
yeah, you guys are like totally tainting everything. You're like a big magnet that's gouging the picture out of the TV screen, pulling me in your direction. And it's actually wonderful because, like I was saying to the producers in one of our phone calls, and I was talking about this process, and they said something about it's good that you're so willing to collaborate or to consider this or that. And I said, "Are you kidding me?" I said, "I'm working with the most talented people in the world right now. If I can't learn something from them, I should quit." And so this is about being a better storyteller. And what I'm learning is, first of all, Marino's getting a little spunkier all of a sudden. I wonder why. Dorothy is, well, you just look at this one. She's hopeless. She is so Dorothy now. And now she's what's happened to Dorothy, though, is she is becoming a bit of a somebody. She's becoming like this force to be reckoned with in my new book. I won't tell you what, but it's like, where did you come from? And look at the trouble that you're causing when the FBI actually asked you to do something for them. Oh God, all hell's going to break loose. And I think she knows that Jamie Lee Curtis is playing her on the damn TV show, and now she's gotten all full of herself.
Well, let me say this. She's very full, if you know what I'm saying.
Oh,
Dorothy uses her
yes.
assets to get what she wants. Let's just tease that, if you will.
Yes, and I have to say one thing about Nicole, because I was doing a live theater event the other night, and a question in the audience was, who is Scarpetta to you now at this stage of life? And I said, Nicole Kidman.
Yeah, yeah.
And I say that with great happiness and affection
Oh,
because
sure.
I didn't know how, I mean, I never know how I'm going to feel about something, but when I met her and looked her in the eye, and by the way, I think she might be left-handed. Is that true? Because it's weird because Scarpetta's left-handed. You don't meet too many people. And don't ask me why I know it, but I know she's left-handed, even though I'm not. But but when I met her and I was looking in her eyes as we were doing this little thing we were doing for TV, I really did feel like my character was looking back at me. So it's a magical process. And here's the thing that's so important about it. And I hope other authors who, if you're listening, you'll remember I said this. Art is to be shared. Just because we create a book, that's one thing. But those characters may have other places they want to be
Mm.
besides between the pages of my book. And if I were them, I know I would. I don't want to be all over the place. So the thing that's so beautiful about this is when people who are really good at what they do collaborate. And God only knows if we all keep doing this, it's going to be one heck of a show.
Well, I'm looking forward for people to be able to see it in
Me
March.
too. It's
Patrick, is
wonderful.
there a question that came from someone?
There are a couple, and I wanted to ask about kind of going forward with the television series. Will it be borrowing, as some other adaptations are, borrowing bits and pieces from different books, or is it going to be
No,
postmodern?
I can answer that. As Jamie said, there are two timelines. And by the way, you and I, when we first started doing this show, I was thinking of going back to Scarpetta, but because you got interested, I decided I would. And if that hadn't happened, we might not have the modern books for the modern story. So since the first season is based on Postmortem, the very first book of mine, and Autopsy, the first of the modern books that are set in Northern Virginia that came out in 2020 or about 5 years ago. And so what fans can be assured of is that you will recognize much about the stories, but don't think you've got it all figured out because those writers are going to throw you for some loops. They threw me for some. I saw some stuff I did not see coming and did not guess. And if they can do that to me, I hate to think what they can do to everybody else. So, but that's the extra fun you get to have. You can love my stories and recognize so much about it, but you get to see something new and these fabulous actors playing these people.
Fantastic. There are a number of questions about the fascinating collection of art objects and things behind you, Patricia. And I know that some of that stuff is Jack the Ripper related. Is that right?
Yes, I can give you a quick little tour back here. The
Great.
very first office building I bought, and that sounds like a big thing to say, but it wasn't that big an office building, but I bought in the early 90s was a medical supply place, and I needed it for my purposes, and there was a skeleton. This is synthetic. I wouldn't have a real one, but this is an anatomical doctor's skeleton. And when they asked if I wanted, buy the building and what would I like to convey with it? And the only thing I wanted was the skeleton. So that was listed on my real estate contract, just so you know. Um, and he's moved with me everywhere I've ever been. These are behind there's a autographed picture of Dickens. I didn't get it when I met him, but I'm getting old enough where I could have. That is Harriet Beecher Stowe, who's an ancestor of mine, that wrote Uncle Tom's Cabin. Agatha Christie, I'm a huge fan of Signed Something. One of Hemingway and the police stuff behind me. I don't know if you can see it, as when I was a volunteer police officer long ago and far away. So And then Walter Sickert is up there, the guy that I don't care what anybody says. I know he was Jack the Ripper. If you ever read my book, you'll know it too. So that's some of the stuff around me. I have some space stuff. I mean, I got all kinds of weird things in here if you were to visit. Jamie knows, she's been in my office.
I
Now,
survived her office.
now the word on the street, Jamie, is that we're going to be returning to Cabot Cove sometime.
Yes,
Is that something that
it's a word on the street. It is being discussed pretty. Look, my doorbell's going off. Literally, how funny! Literally, there's somebody at my door. That's hilarious. Let's see if
Uh-oh, it sounds like Murder, She Wrote about to happen for real.
right.
they'll leave something at the thing, whatever. Yes, we are in. Yes, this is all I can say.
That would be so much
look.
fun.
That's so crazy. Literally, there are people at my gate.
Now
Hold on
I'm
a
getting
second.
worried.
I'm gonna use technology. Hi, Michael. Hi, I'm gonna open the gate.
Well, that might be our cue to
I think.
Well, there
I
we
think I have to
go.
go.
At least,
I
yeah.
get to go get packages. Probably something from you.
Let's.
Patricia, people are going to devour this. Thank you for sending it. Thank you for my favorite little note ever. Have fun. And I hope we get a chance to do this with your memoir.
Well, we will.
I'm very excited for you. I'm very happy you wrote that. I think your fans of your fiction are going to be really happy to learn more about you and your life. And who knows, Patrick, maybe this one and I will do a little road trip.
you will come out to Phoenix. That would be
We'll do it live.
awesome.
Or we'll move, or we'll figure it all out. But we have to do that in person. But most of all, Jamie Lee Curtis, thank you for being here.
You're very welcome. I love it. Are you kidding?
And thank you for all the wonderful magical things you've added to my life.
Well, we're head bitches in charge, babe. Like I like being HBIC, and I like that you're right next to me, and Nicole's on the other side. So thanks, everybody. Stay safe out
Thank you,
there.
everybody.
It's been an honor.
Well done.
Thank you. Good night.
So much.
Bye.
Bye-bye.